Welcome into Surviving Paradise, the podcast that unpacks the spiritual paradise of Jehovah's Witnesses. Yes, that's pure sarcasm. Welcome back in this week. I am the host, Stacy Bauman. I want to thank you all for continuing to listen and all the great comments and encouragement that I'm getting across the digital universe, if you will, after starting this passion project. Again, if you're new to the podcast, this is really a snapshot into the lives of Jehovah's Witnesses, particularly from my perspective, a kid who was raised a Jehovah's Witness through the 70s and 80s, went on to become a ministerial servant, pioneered briefly, became an elder for 11 years, and all the crap that surrounds all that. So it really, take it with a grain of salt. This is my perspective on so much of what I experienced and what I lived through firsthand as one of Jehovah's Witnesses, both as a kid and as an adult. So this week I've got really one of my favorite looks into my brain, I guess, as a former Jehovah's Witness. And again, I always hate coming on the podcast and throwing around all the quote unquote accomplishments or privileges that I had as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. But I did get to experience some rather rare things just based on those quote unquote privileges of being a servant and an elder. But really, this is one of those subjects that goes back to the beginning for me when I was a kid. And when I say kid, probably early teenage years, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, right in there, where I'm for the most part, really an introvert. I've been told I'm pretty intense at times, and that's really because I'm kind of a deep thinker, or maybe it's just flat out disassociation. I'm not sure. I'm willing to consider both. But this is one of those subjects that always had my brain and my mind spinning for hours. And it is what I think one of the most absurdly stupid and insane teachings of Jehovah's Witnesses. And it's one of those that it deserves so much more than I can give it because it's so ridiculous. And it's one of those things that proves right from the get-go that the vast majority of Jehovah's Witnesses, as I state over and over and over again on this podcast, just don't study. They don't read. And this is one of those examples. What is this subject after that big teaser and long intro? It's the subject of the resurrection of the righteous and the unrighteous. And not even sure that's the right title for this, but so much of what they believe, falls into this bucket, especially on the teaching department. And you'll see why as I unpack this thing. And as is always the case, always open to feedback. Was I the only one who contemplated some of this stuff? I seriously doubt that. Very seriously doubt it. But when it comes to the resurrection of the righteous and the unrighteous, this is literally where really the foundation of Jehovah's Witnesses just goes off the rails. It doesn't even make sense, particularly when you consider that Jehovah's Witnesses, their entire life is spent keeping themselves busy in mundane, nonsensical, boring tasks to keep their mind off the fact that, hey, we're completely screwing you over. That being the governing body or the faithful and discreet slave, as I like to refer to him on this show, those 8 guys in upstate New York. So this is one of those things, the resurrection of the righteous and the unrighteous. So let's unpack this thing together. And then I'm always, of course, looking back for some feedback from the audience or those that may take the time to listen. So when it comes to the resurrection and what Jehovah's Witnesses believe and teach, you begin to see as we talk about this, how it's really penetrates almost everything that they do. And like so many of their other teachings, guess what? It's got a group, it's got a subgroup, it's got a second group. It's almost always the case with Jehovah's Witnesses. Everything has 2 groups. The guys going to heaven, the guys going to earth. In this case, those 2 groups are the righteous and the unrighteous. And that's based on Acts 24:15, where it is taught openly, not only in the Bible to Christians of every denomination, but certainly among Jehovah's Witnesses, that there's going to be a resurrection after the end of this wicked world that we live in, at the end of the last days of the last days of the last days, as Stephen Lett likes to say, there's going to be a resurrection. And this is what a lot of Jehovah's Witnesses live for. They live for that moment when they're going to see grandma and grandpa again, when they're going to get that opportunity to meet Abraham Lincoln. I'm not even making this stuff up. This is real conversations I've had or heard. Or they get to meet some great man or woman of old. Amelia Earhart comes back and tells us where she flew to. True stuff among Jehovah's Witnesses. And it's all based on this resurrection. But here's the key point when it comes to resurrection. There's several key points, but keep this point in mind. If or when or how you might get resurrected is all about the timeline. Okay? And this is literally the belief of Jehovah's Witnesses. Here's the timeline. If you're dead before Armageddon, good luck. You get a second chance. You get to come back and make another run at this whole thing called worshiping Jehovah and being amongst his people, following the 8 guys in upstate New York. If you're dead during Armageddon, you are shit out of luck. It's over for you. You are gone forever. It's over. So, timeline. Dead before Armageddon, you get a second chance. Dead during Armageddon, you're out of luck. You're gonzo. It was great. See you later. You won't see me later. Anybody later. So, here we go, folks. Fire up your brains. Get the synapses popping, because this one is as insulting as it gets to a person's intelligence. And it's one of those things that they have every Jehovah's Witness brain completely turned off to. Like, shut down critical thinking, shut down logic. It's time to talk resurrection of the righteous and the unrighteous. So keep that timeline in mind. Dead before Armageddon, you're good to go. You're going to get a second round. Dead during Armageddon, no go. You're done. Let's unpack the first group. Okay. Resurrection of the righteous. Okay. So I won't get too much into the timeline of when Armageddon hits and what happens, seconds after Armageddon's over. Can you even say the dust settles? There's just billions and billions of dead bodies everywhere, according to Jehovah's Witnesses. Everybody gets it. Mass genocide at Armageddon. But when the dust settles, or I don't even think you can throw a phrase at this, what happens next? I don't want to get too much into that, but it's after Armageddon is over and the dust settles and no one's really clear what's going to happen to all the dead bodies or the rubble, or if we'll have electricity, or if McDonald's drive-thru will still be open. It probably won't. But during that 1,000-year reign, there's going to be a resurrection. Blah, 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 blah. Subject for another time. And this one is easy to understand because this first resurrection is the resurrection of the righteous. So here's some examples of some people that are going to show up during this resurrection. We're not sure how. We don't know if people are just sitting around a campfire and boom, one of these people walks up. We don't know if you're going to magically transport yourself to the Middle East, to Israel, to Turkey, Iran, Iraq, where most of biblical peoples lived during one time or another, Syria. We don't know if that's going to happen, but suddenly out of nowhere, during the resurrection of the righteous, these are the kind of people that are going to show up. You're going to see Noah. You might have a few questions for that guy. And as a Jehovah's Witness kid, and as a kid growing up, we all thought, oh my God, I want to put together a list of questions for the great men and women of old. All those people in the Old Testament that died long before Armageddon, who, by the way, none of these people, if you're keeping track of history, even know who Jesus is. So that's an interesting conversation, right? If they just suddenly show back up. But people like Noah, people like King David, there's a guy with an interesting bio, even by the Bible standards. We'll get to meet Job. We'll get to meet Moses and ask him why it was he was so lost for 40 years walking in a giant circle and why they can't find any archaeological evidence to support that the Exodus happened. But these people will magically appear at the resurrection of the righteous. These people get animals. They get panda bears, lions, and tigers and bears, which is happening in paradise. They, according to Jehovah's Witness illustrations, they're going to get society issued khakis, as seen in every paradise illustration in the Watchtower magazine. They're going to get their own fruit bowl. Remember, no meat. We're now all herbivores, just like Adam was, only we wear pants. Adam does not, or did not, at least not till after Eve made him sin. So these are the people that get to enjoy all those things. It's the people that the Bible refers to as men and women of faith. Jehovah's Witnesses teach that they get to be part of the resurrection of the righteous. This might also include people who sacrificed their lives during the Holocaust, or people throughout the centuries, which were a little vague after the first century leading up to the 20th, that were, as Jehovah's Witnesses you like to opine on, might have been people who were faithful, kind, loving, even though there was no quote unquote organization or 8 guys in upstate New York. They might have been good people throughout that time, leading up to, of course, 1914, when Jesus would take his throne. So it could be anybody in that time period that might have been a good person of faith, resurrection of the righteous. However, I think here's a good time to drop a special tidbit on those that might be listening. Here's a special note for you, though. So men and women come back. We mentioned a bunch of guys' names, but there's equally amazing female characters in the Bible. Note this, however. In the past, the Watchtower has taught that resurrected ones will not be permitted to marry or even reunite with a former spouse and remarry and live happily ever after in paradise. They've taught that that's not going to happen. What do they base that on? Who knows? They pull out a few spurious verses that Jesus said, even though they teach Jesus was talking to people going to heaven, and they do some mental gymnastics to arrive at this. But then again, in 2014, they revised this a little bit. They backed it off a little bit. Again, read New Light. And they said, well, in reality, we don't know. So now they're taking the old, shrug, does it really matter? Let's wait on Jehovah thing. Even though we are completely buried in illustrations and songs and videos. Oh my God, the videos of the last 5 years or so at the district convention showing resurrected ones reunited. The emotional heartstrings are pulled upon constantly in the resurrection of the righteous. And we're led to believe that we'll be reunited with those that we love. However, slight disclaimer for those people who are loyal to a spouse or were truly in love throughout their marriage, we're not really clear whether you're ever even going to be able to do that again. So, very interesting history, subject for its own episode, in my opinion, because they've gone all over the board on this one as to what happens. Again, none of it commented on in the Bible. So why are they even bothering to comment on it? Not to mention resurrection as a whole doesn't mention a paradise earth. That's a subject for another day as well. I'm just focusing in at this point on what they are teaching people. And you can see this in the publications, this resurrection of the righteous. Just millions and millions of pages of 5-6 color illustrations of people running from cemeteries, people hugging, being reunited with grandparents and loved ones that they've lost. All of these people fall into that bucket of these two groups, the bucket that we call resurrection of the righteous. So they're to see where good people would be rewarded in Jehovah's Witness land or Watchtower land with life forever in paradise on earth, which has been the theme of their message really since about 1932. when they discovered that there was going to be two groups, one going to heaven. Yeah, magically, Jesus kind of kept them in the dark for a few decades. And then new light came out. And suddenly there was a second group who was just going to live on earth in paradise, despite the Bible only mentioning the word paradise about twice in all its pages. Never mentions paradise earth. Again, mind blowing. They built an entire religion around this concept. So I digress. We have one bucket, the resurrection of the righteous. An easy one to see. Good people, good things happen. Despite some of the details being just a little bit crazy. Let's look at the second group. And this is where it gets good. This is where you're asked as a Jehovah's Witness to just sit there, shut up, turn your brain off, and accept whatever it is that we're spoon feeding you from the stage. And this, of course, comes from those great 8 guys in upstate New York, because they are now the faithful and discreet slave, leveraging a parable into an entire century plus worth of control over millions of people. Okay. Bucket 1, done. Bucket 2, resurrection of the unrighteous. Now, here's where it's interesting, because there's actually 2 groups of these as well. So if you're following, we've got an umbrella. We got a group of righteous. We got a group of unrighteous. But in the unrighteous, there's 2 separate groups. So technically we get 3 groups. Ugh. This is what happens when critical thinking is shut down and people just make stuff up as they go. I'm sorry. I digress. When Jesus just isn't real clear on what he's teaching his 8 friends in New York. Okay. Group 1 of the unrighteous. These people are dead before Armageddon. Following? These people are dead before Armageddon, but they're unrighteous. According to the Watchtower, the unrighteous aren't bad people, but they're just those who did not get a chance to know Jehovah well. They didn't get to have that Bible study with one of Jehovah's Witnesses. They didn't get a chance to be baptized at their regional circuit assembly hall or at a district convention. They just didn't get the message. If you're sitting back now and you're wondering to yourself, why would a God of love not be certain that every human being on the planet had an opportunity to get to know him, especially when their life was on the line? That would be a really good question, and a reasonable one for people who haven't turned their brains off. But Jehovah's Witnesses teach that with the unrighteous that were dead before Armageddon, they weren't bad people. They just didn't get the message. Huh. Okay. What about all the people who do not serve or obey Jehovah because they never knew about him? I'm sorry, let me back up. Quoting from the What Does the Bible Really Teach book, the 2016 printing, page 72 through 73, paragraph 19. Quote, what about all the people who did not serve or obey Jehovah because they never knew about him? These billions of unrighteous ones will not be forgotten. They too will be resurrected. End quote. If this is where the confusion starts, don't feel strange about it. We got a righteous group dead before Armageddon. They're coming back. We got an unrighteous group. They're dead before Armageddon. They're coming back. And then we're going to move into a third group of unrighteous people who are dead before Armageddon. Okay? But as you can see, Jehovah's Witnesses teach in one of their latest Bible study aids, What Does the Bible Really Teach? That these people were just, they didn't get a shot. They didn't get to know Jehovah. They missed out turning the corner and running into the cart or whatever it might be that would expose them to Jehovah's Witnesses. The majority of people who have ever died in ignorance of Jehovah. Those are the untold billions of unrighteous people that are going to be resurrected to life on earth. It's all about the timeline before Armageddon. Damocles hanging, the sword of Damocles hanging over your head on this timeline. I I was righteous and I died before Armageddon. I come back. I'm unrighteous, but never got to run into a book cart where somebody handed me a free publication. I too am coming back. Untold billions of unrighteous ones, as Acts 24:15 brings out, are also coming back. Just because, well, bad luck. Jehovah didn't make sure they got the message, so he's going to give them a second shot. Okay. If there's a sense of confusion, I hope it's not my poor relating of the subject. I hope it's genuinely because you're going, huh? Because it starts to raise a lot of questions about not only the Jehovah's Witness religion, but about religion in general. Nonetheless, this is their own very special take from the 8 guys that have a special relationship with Jesus and what they're dispensing to the planet. And of course, they're the only ones that are right in all the universe. So we got our first 2 groups, and I digress. I'm repeating myself, but righteous people dead before Armageddon, unrighteous people dead before Armageddon, but just didn't get to run into a book cart or someone knock on their door. Group 2 of the unrighteous group. These are the people that are being really naughty when Armageddon hits. And guess what? It's too late. So you might be asking, what about those unrighteous ones who never heard of Jehovah? Or does the Watchtower believe that they will reach absolutely everybody in the preaching work before Armageddon hits? It just turns out that that question doesn't matter at all, because they go on to say, out of the other side of their mouth, they tell us this, that those ignorant of Jehovah will be killed at Armageddon. Remember, they just said those who missed out wouldn't. Now they're saying they would. Watchtower of 1993, October 1st, page 19. Quote, there are billions of people who do not know Jehovah. Many of them in ignorance practice things that God's word shows to be wicked. If they persist in this course, they will be among those who perish during the Great Tribulation. End quote. Watchtower 1993, October 1st, page 2, 2019. Are you following this? Are you following this? What does the Bible really teach? What about the billions of people who never knew him? They're getting resurrected. Watchtower 93, just a couple decades earlier, there are a billion people who didn't know him. They're all dead. It's unbelievable. So, based on this teaching, the way it stands today, of the resurrection of the righteous and the unrighteous, okay, to be crystal clear, you're a good person dead before Armageddon, you're coming back. You're a bad person before Armageddon who never got someone knocking on their door, you're coming back. You're a person doing naughty things when Armageddon hits, you're dead and gone forever. It's all based on the timeline. It's all based on the timeline. So, good luck, bad luck, predestination, whatever phrase you want to throw on this, again, good person, dead before Armageddon, coming back, bad person before Armageddon, never heard from a witness, coming back, doing something terrible, and we're going to list those terrible things here, some examples. When Armageddon hits, you're done, you're gone forever. So, if you're following along at home and keeping score with this reasoning of Jehovah's Witnesses and the governing body, faithful to discreet slave of Jehovah's Witnesses, this means the following people are going to be resurrected. And let me back up for a minute. Before we do the scorecard. And we're really going to expound on this for a few minutes because it's been one of my pet peeves the entire time I was a Jehovah's Witness. The Jehovah's Witnesses also teach at Romans 6:7, those who have died have been acquitted from their sin. So when you die, your sin goes with you. That's a very critical point among Jehovah's Witnesses. Because again, good person before Armageddon live. Bad person didn't get a Bible study, gonna live again. Bad person when Armageddon hits, you're dead forever. So with that in mind, and you're keeping score along at home, and your brain is now spinning in the wind, if you will, on this issue, and hopefully I have explained it well enough. This means the following people are going to be resurrected to a paradise earth. Are you ready? Adolf Hitler, Saddam Hussein, Pol Pot, Joseph Stalin, Jeffrey Dahmer, members of the KKK, abusers, pedophiles, mass murderers, Scar from The Lion King. I threw that one in there. All of these people get a second chance. A second chance. Because Jehovah's Witnesses teach not only the aforementioned resurrection beliefs, because none of those people got a Bible study, right? But they also teach that when you die, your sins go with you. Your slate is wiped clean. You get a second chance when you're resurrected among the unrighteous in paradise. Those people get a chance, a second chance. But if Armageddon hits today and you're doing these crazy things, you are dead and gone forever. Maybe you're donating blood. Maybe you've smoked a cigarette. Maybe you're celebrating birthdays or Christmas. Or maybe, oh my God, imagine this. You just told a Jehovah's Witness to get off your doorstep. Guess what? You're dead. Adolf Hitler gets a second shot. And note that this thinking applies in the past to these situations as well. The babies killed in the flood of Noah's day, gone forever. Gone forever. Adolf Hitler, Jeffrey Dahmer, those guys, they get a second shot because their slate is wiped clean. According to Acts 24:15, they'll be among the unrighteous. According to Romans 6:7, their slate has been wiped clean. They get another shot. The people caught when Jesus and the 8 guys from New York and their friends show up to kill us all in a mass genocide, you're caught doing one of these things. Nope, no second chance. You're done. And if you're thinking about this right now, let's put in a note, as I always do. It seems like it comes up in every episode. Just a note on children. What about children and babies? Are they going to be killed at Armageddon? You know, in the past, the Watchtower and all of the publications, they seem really reluctant to answer that question, just come out with it, be forthright. But they imply it. They absolutely imply it. It's unbelievable. Here's a book that they mothballed that was literally one of their staple publications in the field ministry in the 80s, 90s, and beyond. Reasoning from the Scriptures under the subject Armageddon, what about children? Page 48. It says, quote, "In times past, when God destroyed the wicked, he likewise destroyed their little ones." End quote. Well, thanks. Thanks, governing body. Thanks for the reminder. They don't come out and say he's going to do it again, but I think we know what they're implying. Children will be killed. So the Watchtower teaches that all the children who are not Jehovah's Witnesses will be killed at Armageddon. They teach that. So at any other time prior to Armageddon, children would be then in that bucket of unrighteous people due a resurrection. Just not the kids who are kids right now when Armageddon hits. Those kids are gone forever because they're somehow more evil on the timeline. The other kids get a second shot, possibly. But the kids that die, if Armageddon hits today, no second shot, just like those kids in Noah's day, no second shot. That the loving God Jehovah and his son Jesus, along with the 8 guys in upstate New York, have decided that kids playing with a magic toy like Sparlock in the Caleb and Sophia videos can't be Jehovah's friend, or not donating their ice cream money like the Caleb and Sophia videos, and many other subjects. Those kids not doing those things, if Armageddon hits today, are fit for destruction with no shot of resurrection in a paradise earth. You know, they don't get a second shot to grow up and be an adult with an educated mind and emotions. They don't get to even sniff that second shot in the resurrection of the unrighteous. They're just gone forever. They don't get a shot to make better decisions while petting panda bears and eating strawberries in their society issued khakis. They're just gone forever. So, in conclusion, based on these teachings surrounding resurrection and sin being wiped clean, Hitler in, innocent babies out. If you're keeping score at home. This is the type of thing that's going on in kingdom halls. This is the type of teaching that is blatantly taught from the stages of kingdom halls and at conventions of Jehovah's Witnesses. And it says nothing making light of guys like Tony Morris who get up there and refer to people as toasted hot dogs, or he likes to refer back to his days in Vietnam with people all split open and burning. I mean, like he just can't wait. Some of those people are going to be babies who can't even read because they were born on a timeline, just like the kids in Noah's day. Just bad luck, bad luck. Hitler, look, man, you get a second shot. According to Romans 6:7, your sins are wiped clean. We'll call you back. We'll give you another shot at this thing. Absolutely insane. So I want to hone in for a minute on that Romans 6:7. And this is what the verse reads in the New World Translation, and it's a commentary, obviously, by Paul at this point, regarding the resurrection hope and what happens to a person, but simply stated, and it has been expounded upon in public talks and literature. You can go find it. Jehovah's Witnesses teach, as I just kind of alluded to, at Romans 6:7 New World Translation reads, quote, "For the one who has died has been acquitted from his sin," end quote. Those people that die before Armageddon on this all lucky timeline, they get a fast pass to paradise through the resurrection on earth. They've been wiped clean. They paid their sin. They're dead. Then they come back. So that the Hitlers, the Osama bin Ladens, the people who have murdered and maimed women and children, they get another shot. The babies, they might have been watching a Smurf cartoon when Armageddon hit. They're done. They're done. But it always raised a bigger question in my mind. A much bigger question. If you believe in this resurrection teaching, along with the timeline and along with the criteria that Jehovah's Witnesses jam down people's throats, which is, for review, Acts 24:15, there's going to be a resurrection of the righteous and the unrighteous. Romans 6:7, those who have died have been acquitted from their sin. They're wiped clean. Second shot, they get the fast pass. Okay? If you believe in this, there's a much bigger question that needs to be answered. And this is the kind of questions that tossed around in my brain from the time I was a young guy and old enough to understand. Fortunately, I made it past the baby stage, unlike kids in Noah's day or kids that might be a baby when Armageddon hits today. I got the good luck of growing up a little bit. But here's the question. If you're dead or killed before Armageddon, thereby guaranteed a fast pass to resurrection in paradise, but alive and just oblivious when Armageddon hits, therefore condemned to a fireball, why are they preaching? Why are Jehovah's Witnesses preaching? Let me break that down in simple terms. If you're a righteous person, you're there. If you're unrighteous and you get the fast pass because no one talked to you, you're there. If you're just happen to be alive when Armageddon hits, you're dead unless you're a Jehovah's Witness. So here's the question. Why all the preaching? Why all the literature? They claim they're the most loving organization on earth, that they are led by the loving God, Jehovah. So why are Jehovah's Witnesses just loving terrorists, committing atrocities against the masses, mass murdering people, killing everyone while they can, all the while screaming, hey, I'm going to wipe you out right here and give you the fast pass. You can thank me later over a spinach smoothie in paradise. Isn't that, in all honesty, the more loving thing to do? To guarantee someone gets a shot at paradise instead of risking their chance because they were having a bad day and they closed their front door to another unwanted visit from a Jehovah's Witness on a Saturday during cartoons. They're literally taking a chance that their poorly written literature, their terrible, corny videos, their book carts, all of which are ineffective and really don't even begin to capture the importance of this. They're laying all their weight on that effectively saving our lives when they could just give us all a fast pass by just mass murdering all of us and skipping the whole preaching thing. Just get us right to the fast pass, my second shot in paradise. Why aren't they on a crusade to get us all there by wiping us all out? Doesn't it make sense to at least get everyone on to step 2, where you're in a paradise surrounding in a completely different environment, and maybe it gets our attention and it wakes us all up to how great those 8 guys in New York were all along. Wow, I mean, Stephen Lett and Toni Morris were a real turnoff in my old life, but I'll be damned, they were right. Look at this, paradise. Maybe I wake up in a room full of lions hosted by Daniel himself, eating the perfect spinach salad. Maybe I listen? Why all the preaching work? Why is the God of love risking that poorly equipped people who don't even remotely touch on higher education? Many of them can't explain a basic doctrine of the Bible. Many of them can't explain what I just made an effort to. Why would Jehovah risk so many people's lives on that instead of just, I don't know, dropping bombs on all of us and get us there quicker? Why aren't JWs just mass murderers? I think about that shot in Scarface where he's saying, say hello to my little friend. Hey, say hello to paradise, and just get us all down. We wake up, hey, second round. Second round. I don't think any of us want to be like the little babies in Noah's day who got whacked because we couldn't even read or couldn't even talk or didn't know any better. We were just babies. Seriously contemplated that question many, many times throughout my time as a Jehovah's Witness. If our sins are wiped clean on death, why isn't that our whole message? And let's face it, there's religions on this earth that do that in a little different way. I'll leave that alone. But the concept that good people come back, bad people who just didn't learn enough come back, bad people who happen to be, sitting there doing something bad, like, I don't know, having a birthday party when Armageddon hits, they're gone forever. But that Hitler guy seems like a pretty good dude. Let's bring him back. Give him a second shot. And if all of this is the case, why are they preaching instead of just dropping bombs on all of us so we can get there quicker? Not only get there quicker, but we're guaranteed to get there. The vast majority of people who know nothing about Jehovah's Witnesses, and that's the majority of life on this planet, will never know a Jehovah's Witness. Why aren't they just guaranteeing they get a chance? They wake up in paradise with a nice spinach salad, their society-issued khakis and dresses, and they actually get a shot to live forever. Whereas now, they have no shot. You literally look at things like this and realize that they're teaching people to turn their brains off at the door. Turn your brain off, believe in our fantasies. And by the way, if you question it, we're going to come after you as someone who's an apostate or someone that's a critical thinker. You could bring this question up, and if you're a PMO, as they say now, I don't advise it because you'll be on their radar. But if you just ask them, tell me more about the resurrection, the righteous and the unrighteous, how that happens, I guarantee you, you're going to see an elder, a man whose life you've literally placed it, your life, you've placed in his hands as someone who could give you advice and counsel that might be life altering. He's not going to be able to explain this to you. He can't. They all lean into the wait on Jehovah phrase. Meanwhile, they're teaching stuff like this. I mean, when I was a kid, I can't even tell you how many hours I spent spinning on this subject. Like, this makes no sense. Good people come back, makes sense. Bad people who didn't know any better, okay, that kind of makes sense. Really bad people who just happen to be alive when Jehovah's had enough, they don't get another shot. Why? It doesn't make much sense. There's been a lot of bad people who've died and their sins got washed away when they died, but they get another shot. But not the babies of Noah's day. Those babies seen in the Bible story book in 3 or 4 full color illustrations, they're gone forever. Never mind that they couldn't even read. It's just a level of stupid that just defies any amount of critical thinking. And listen, I think if you were a kid in the 70s or 80s on this subject of the resurrection and paradise on earth, which is a much larger subject in a lot of ways, you were just filled with questions, really natural questions a kid would have. I mean, and the funny thing is a lot of the questions are very childlike. And yet as you get older, they're the same questions. They're the same questions. Here's some of the ones that just pop into my mind when I think about the hours I spent on Romans 6:7. Wait a minute, sins go with you, you get another chance. Why are we knocking on doors? Why don't we just mass murder everybody and get them to the second chance stage of this whole thing? Yeah, never mind. Let's go knock on doors. Here's some of the questions I had in reference to the resurrection on the paradise earth, which, as I alluded to, is not taught in the Bible. The word paradise itself is mentioned like 2 to 4 times and nothing in connection with the paradise earth, as taught by Jehovah's Witnesses, that is. But here's some questions. Tell me if you had any of these. What, as you look at the Watchtower, and that's all you have as a kid, and even as you grow older and you're an adult and you're teaching from this literature, this is all you have. Here's one. Why does Jehovah bring people back fully clothed, shoes and all? Like, where do they come from? Is there, like, do they come out of the ground and there's, a Jehovah's Witness there waiting with a nice pair of khakis and a dress over each arm going, welcome to paradise. Here's your clothing. Isn't it modest and wonderful? Why do the illustrations of the resurrection still show people coming back old or even older in some cases? Why do they show Lazarus coming back straight from embalming in rags, but in the future, everyone gets society-issued khakis, dresses, and dress shoes to enjoy paradise in? As if that's how Jehovah's Witnesses live outside the Kingdom Hall. I've got my dress shoes on and a nicely pressed shirt and tie. These are the kind of things when you're a kid as a Jehovah's Witness, you're looking at going, I got some questions here. I mean, look, this is a peek into my brain, which is very scary if you're listening and continuing to listen at this point. But my brain's literally, how do they know Noah's pant size or Moses' shoe size? Does Ruth and Rahab get society-issued bras? Do they even know what a bra is? How about shoes? Who's making those dress shoes? Did department stores survive Armageddon? They're in every illustration. Given to us by the 8 guys in upstate New York, the faithful and discreet slave. As I got older, I'm not kidding, and it's so embarrassing, but I'm going to share it anyway. I'm thinking, who's going to walk the great women of old through, modern menstruation hygiene? Like, how does that work? They didn't have any of the things women fortunately have today to help them. Are, are they going to hold a 2-day circuit assembly to inform the fellows about the how-tos of modern circumcision? Who gives that talk? Stephen Latt, Tony Morris from heaven? What happens if Abraham tries to sacrifice a goat? Who fills him in on the new light? How about this? I've thought these things, people. I'm embarrassed to admit this. Who gets to study with Hitler during the 1,000-year reign? I mean, what? Who's cleaning up all the dead bodies the birds are nibbling on all around us? On and on it goes. On and on it goes. Because it's absurd and it's ridiculous. And I've always viewed this one doctrine, if you can call it a doctrine, this one understanding of teaching surrounding the resurrection and all that goes into it, as proof that most Jehovah's Witnesses do not study. They don't read their literature. They've never read the Bible. That's the facts. That's the facts. Because if you do, and you're at all a critical thinker, or you're at all just logical or brimming with common sense, you're asking some of these questions. Romans 6:7 is a doozy. If you die and your sins go with you and you get a clean slate, why wouldn't you just die then so you could get to part 2 as quickly as humanly possible? It's all just ridiculous, at times hilarious. It's insulting. For a while, it's hilarious and insulting until you consider that an 8-year-old getting baptized as a Jehovah's Witness does not understand this. Not at all. Then they grow up, 13, 14, 15, and they start asking questions. Boom. They have a bad attitude. You're heading towards apostate thinking. At worst, they realize it's all garbage. And now because they got baptized saying they'd agreed with this when they never even remotely understood it, they risk being disfellowshipped and shunned by their family, all because of 8 guys in upstate New York. It's not funny. It stops being funny. It ceases to be humorous. And they're doing this. At the recent annual meeting, they're encouraging youth baptism. They're encouraging elders at the ripe age of 20. I'm trying to imagine a woman in her 60s trying to talk to a 20-year-old elder to get life advice from him. They're actually promoting this kind of thinking. But this starts young if you're raised as a Jehovah's Witness. Now, this may seem funny in my stupid questions I had as a kid, but as you get older, those questions morph into real questions because you never understood it when you were younger. And now that you do, you want. Why are you dedicating your life to something that teaches such brain-dead ideas, ideology that is so preposterous and ridiculous? And I mean, I have barely grazed the surface on this subject, but it was on my mind lately as to be candid, it's been one of those things that's been on my mind for many years during my time as a Jehovah's Witness. It never made sense to me. I just pictured a Jehovah's Witness, and God forbid this, it's horrible to even bring this up, particularly in our day and age, but it's someone just going in and just getting rid of a whole bunch of people screaming, "You can thank me later in paradise," because the Bible teaches in ignorance, their sins are washed clean and they get another shot. It literally borderline makes their entire religion and its practice of preaching a moot point. Ridiculous. A completely moot point. So my question to you folks is, did you ever have crazy, stupid, silly thoughts like this? I think when I think about this stuff, it really shows me, even as a man in his 50s, but who was raised a witness from the time he was about 3 or 4 and reached the status of elder and taught, it really makes me realize that these traumatic thinking patterns and fantasies and lies they're ingrained in me, because I remember unpacking these questions, this thought process at different stages of my life as I grew older as a kid. And therefore, the reason for this podcast, and many like it, saving people from a cult, particularly children, making certain that they're never exposed to this type of ridiculous thinking, that they never make a commitment to an organization at a young age that's teaching this stuff, only to, as they mature, realize that it's a complete pile of crap. And that's in fact what this teaching is. The resurrection of the righteous, the unrighteous, as taught in Acts at chapter 24, verse 15, is loaded with questions, none of which Jehovah's Witnesses can answer, particularly because their entire platform is erroneous in itself, that there's two groups, an earthly class, a heavenly class, not taught in the Bible anywhere, people, nowhere. When Jehovah's Witnesses quote, well, Jesus said there'd be other sheep. Folks, read the Bible. Jesus was a Jew. Soon the Christian faith was open to Gentiles. Ding! Other sheep. Non-Jews. It has nothing to do with an earthly class or people going to heaven, as the 8 guys in New York would have us believe. So I sense that I was a little all over the board on this one, and for that I apologize. I think that it's just one of those things that is so ridiculous and so absurd that I have unpacked mentally and emotionally so many times over the years that it's difficult to even convey it. And you may see some things that you disagree with or that you feel I was wrong on. Please comment. Love to hear all about that. This understanding is something that Jehovah's Witnesses are taught at a very young age. And then as you grow, the questions start coming in. What is the point of all of it if even unrighteous people who just didn't study the Bible get a second shot? What's the point? Let's save a whole bunch of time and give everybody a fast pass to cut to the front of the line and get that second shot over a nice spinach salad and a strawberry smoothie with Moses, Daniel, and the guys in paradise. It's going to make our decision to worship Jehovah a whole lot easier, isn't it? Isn't it? I think so. Well, that's it for this episode of Surviving Paradise. I hope that it gave you or someone that is listening something to think about. That's really the purpose of this. And it really is more of a passion project to be able to help other people to at least come up with questions, engage in some critical thinking, make them think, look, we want to laugh too. And that's really the point of this thing, is to find a way to laugh and heal, at least for those of us that were part of such nonsense and have come out of it. Because inevitably, those that come out are leaving something behind. And that's oftentimes very painful. So thank you to everybody who is listening, continues to listen, like, subscribe. I really appreciate it. Love all the comments, the DMs that I'm getting on all the great social media platforms. But as a parting shot, please, 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 if you are a Jehovah's Witness and you happen to stumble on this podcast, please don't turn your brain off. Please don't turn it off. You likely still believe in God. If you believe he gave you that brain, why would he ever want you to turn it off to this stuff? Please, please, please ask yourself the important questions. So friends, thanks for everything. We will see you next week. Thanks for joining me as we took a walk. No society-issued khakis were issued in this, but we took a walk through paradise. Thanks for joining me here on Surviving Paradise. We'll see you next week.